Okay, let's pray. Wahai putera wujud kebulananku di bumiku, wahai putera wujud kebulananku di bumiku, bayang di surgaku, aku dapat ingati kamu, supaya di surgaku aku dapat ingati kau. Demikianlah mata diriku dan dirimu akan dihiburkan. Demikianlah mata diriku dan dirimu akan dihiburkan.
Excuse me, Yasi. People have asked for a prayer that would be for our friends and people in Turkey and the surrounding areas. I'm wondering if someone could say a prayer. Welcoming Grace and Dr. Valerie Dawn and everyone else.
Is there any remover of difficulties save God? Say, praise be God. He is God. All are his servants and all abide by his bidding.
Is there any remover of difficulties save God? Say, praised be God. He is God. All are his servants and all abide by his bidding.
Thank you all for the wonderful prayers. So before I introduce the speaker, I just want to thank you all for logging on here tonight to listen to this amazing talk that we'll be having. It's so nice seeing so many faces from all around the world. So tonight's speaker is Dr. Rodney Clarken, who is an emeritus professor of Northern Michigan University. And the topic for tonight is on the process of becoming your true self, which integrates many fields, including psychology, philosophy, and religion. He will also be connecting to the three basic human capacities of knowing, loving, and willing, and how they're part of human development. and specifically through the body, mind, and soul. So I'm sure we're all very excited to have Mr. Clarken here tonight. So I will let him take it away. And just a reminder to those who have questions or comments to wait until the end. But yeah, welcome.
Thank you. It's so great to be with you all. I am so excited for Azande always has a lovely gathering, and she brings such love to those gatherings. And I just feel the love of the people here. It's so nice to see many faces that I've known in the past and some that I've met recently. I have given several talks here, and in the past I've always just spoken, but I would like to tonight to try something a little different. I'm going to be sharing the screen, and we're going to, I've created a PowerPoint that hopefully it will work fine. And so I'm trusting that everyone can see this all right. Is that true?
Yes, we can see it.
All right. So now I need to get rid of a couple things on my screen so that I can see it. It's unfortunately, this is, oh Lordy, come on. I'm trying, there we go. Sorry. All right. This talk is called The Process of Becoming Your True Self. And it's a topic that I have been involved with for over 50 years. I became a Baha'i back in, well, it was a process, but 1968. And shortly after that, a pamphlet was produced. It was actually an article in World Order magazine called The Becoming Your True Self. And it had a great deal of influence on me. It was by Daniel Jordan. And I was very much in that process. I heard about the faith when I was 16, and I was clearly in that process of trying to find who my true self was. And the Baha'i faith has been instrumental in me in that process. And so I just want to share a few quotes today to explore this. This is a topic that's way beyond a short presentation. So I'm just going to pull a few what I think pertinent quotes, and hopefully we can have some discussion and consultation about that. So I think the key thing is understanding where we are, and humanity is gripped in a crisis of identity as various peoples and groups struggle to define themselves and their place in the world and how they should act. This is not the first time this has been said in the Baha'i writings. It's been said in many different ways from the very beginning. The House of Justice made a similar statement in 1974 when they wrote to the NSA of the National Spiritual Assembly of Italy, who was asking them, how should we respond to the suffering? And so we just were hearing about the suffering in Turkey. And of course, as people, Baha'is as well, we are very concerned about other people suffering. And so the NSA was saying, what can we do? How can we help? And that letter is a remarkable letter. I think it's November 19th, 1974. And you can find that letter as well as all these other letters online by going to the Baha'i Reference Library. But in that letter, they say what the world desperately needs is to know how they should be. They need to know who they are, for what purpose they exist, and how they should act in the world. So this statement that they made just, well, it's 4 years ago now, in what was talking about peace, a letter was focused on peace, is really a restatement of that, because it's become an issue where everyone is looking for their identity and everyone is seeking their identity. And people are trying to define themselves. Who am I? They're trying to find their place in the world. What is my purpose? Why am I here? And they're also trying to find out how they should act. So, oh, it's going slow. In another message, the House has said that the result, and this is the result of what's happening in society, is a culture that distorts human nature and purpose, trapping human beings in pursuit of idle fancies and vain imaginings, and turning them into pliable objects in the hands of the powerful. Yet the happiness and well-being of humanity depend upon the opposite, cultivating human character and social order in conformity with reality. Just before this talk tonight, I was in a training session and on building peace through service. And one of the things that we were talking about is that the young people today idea of who they are and what is their purpose and how they should be comes from a society that has a very distorted idea about who we are as human beings and what our purpose is. They have a very materialistic view, and they see humans as basically pursuing their self-interest. And as a result, people are lost and they are behaving in ways that actually are contrary to their happiness. And as the House says here, our happiness and well-being depend upon the opposite of this distorted view of human nature and purpose. It is the cultivating of human character and social order in conformity with reality. And again, people's view of reality is very skewed by this materialistic framework that is predominating in society. This quote is one of my favorites from Baha'u'llah. He says, "O my servants, could ye apprehend with what wonders of my munificence and bounty I have willed to entrust your souls? Ye would of a truth rid yourselves of attachment to all created things, and would gain a true knowledge of your own selves, a knowledge which is the same as the comprehension of mine own being." This is very pertinent to the process of becoming our true selves, because our true selves, knowing our true selves, is the same as knowing God. And as you know from the writings, that is one of our key purposes in life. So if we could apprehend of what wonders of munificence and bounty God has entrusted our souls, we would rid ourselves of these vain imaginings, these idle fancies, all of these attachments that hold us back. And we would gain a true knowledge of our own selves. And we would strive towards becoming those true selves, which really is that God self that each one of us has imprinted, that nobility and richness we were born with. I want to share this quote from Abdu'l-Baha in Star of the West. It is helpful because in the Baha'i writings, there is
I apologize, Rod, but some people are not able to hear you. Can you kindly be a bit louder?
Yes, I'm going to put on my headset and see if that helps. Thank you
Sure.
for letting me know now.
Let us know.
So is this for people?
Oh, it's better. It's getting better. Just get a little closer to the mic. Okay.
Well, the mic is right by my throat,
Perfect.
so I can't get any closer.
Thank you.
But thank you for letting me know. And if there's any problem with seeing these slides, any other problems I should address right now so we don't have to suffer for another half hour.
Everyone says it's good.
Excellent, excellent. Because I can't see the faces. I'm looking at the slides. So the problem is that in our faith and in our language, the words soul, mind, spirit, heart, inner being, all kind of get mushed up. And that what is human reality? And this is a statement by Abdu'l-Baha that gives a little bit of clarity. Human reality is the same reality which is given different names according to the different conditions wherein it becomes manifest. Because of its attachment to matter in the phenomenal world, when it governs the physical functions of the body, it is called the human soul. When it manifests itself as the thinker, the comprehender, it is called the mind. And when it soars into the atmosphere of God and travels in the spiritual world, it becomes designated as the spirit. And there are other writings from Baha'u'llah saying that this life force, which is given different names in the Baha'i writings, is the cause of our vision, it's cause of our hearing, it's cause of our very life. If that life force is cut off, we no longer exist. So everything that manifests from us comes from this human reality, which generally in this presentation, we're going to be referring to as the soul. But Shoghi Effendi had also commented that we do have a problem because not only are these words somewhat hard to understand, the different translators, and of course this was in Star of the West, it isn't an authorized translation, and each translator would take the words and give them their own interpretation. And so we do have to recognize that some of these words will cross over. Abdu'l-Baha explains that human being has two natures, the spiritual higher nature and material or lower nature. And the purpose of life is to gain mastery over the limitations and promptings of one's material nature and to cultivate spiritual qualities and virtues. The attributes of the soul, which constitutes one's true and abiding identity. So when we are talking about what our true self is, becoming our true self is really becoming one with our soul. It is identifying with our soul, which is our true identity. And if we can move to that identity, we'll be able to transcend so many of the prejudices, limitations, biases that that hamper our society from progressing. Because when you look at a person, you don't see, it isn't their physical reality. It isn't their mental reality. It is their soul that is their true identity. So if we can look beyond these differences that seem to make disunity and see that point of unity, that we all are in the image of God. We all have been created to know and love God. So what the Baha'is believe is that we have three aspects of our humanness: a body, a mind, and an immortal identity, which again is referred to generally as soul or spirit. We believe the mind forms a link between the soul and the body, and the two interact on each other. We, in our short obligatory prayer, the noonday prayer, we say, "I bear witness, O my God, that thou hast created me to know thee and to worship thee." In those few words, we have a very much an idea of who we are and what our purpose is. we are to know and to worship God. And worshiping involves loving and obeying. So becoming our true selves requires developing the three basic human capacities of knowing, loving, and willing through our three natures of body, mind, and soul. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that in this presentation, and then we'll be able to explore that more in our conversation afterwards. This diagram probably capsulizes what I want to convey to you in a simple pictorial fashion. As you can see, the concentric circles start with the body self in the middle, the self with a small s. We start with that small s self, which actually starts off as a dot in life, which is a zygote, a one cell, a creature, and it progresses through the mind and soul to become the true self. And that process of progressing from that one cell body self to the true self of our soul requires our capacities to know, to love, and to will. And each of those aspects of our nature has the capacity to know, love, and will. As we develop, as when we're born, our minds and souls have not yet developed. And so we are primarily operating from our bodies. And we will talk a little bit about that and how we transcend those limitations of the body and move into the mind and soul as we go along. And of course, if something isn't clear, we can talk about it later. I don't want to belabor things here because it may be clear enough and we can get on to other things. So the beginning of our true self is you are here as a dot. We start off as a one-celled zygote that contains all of our future possibilities, all of who we are, our physical identity, our mental capacities, and our soul are all associated with that one cell organism. In some answer questions, Abdu'l-Baha says, from the beginning of his, referring to man's formation, the mind and the spirit existed. Only later in the world of the womb, too, the mind and the spirit exist in the embryo, but are concealed and appear only afterwards. It is even as the seed. The tree exists within it, but it's hidden and concealed. When the seed grows and develops, the tree appears in its fullness. In like manner, the growth and development of all beings proceeds by gradual degrees. This is the universal and divinely ordained law and the natural order. So this is going to be pertinent that we think that this universal, divinely ordained law of growth and development coming in gradual degrees is an important organizing principle or an important concept for us to help us understand who we are and how we fulfill our purpose. So our mind and spirit can grow and develop by gradual degrees, as Abdu'l-Baha says. We start off in the mineral state, which evolutionarily, first there were minerals, then vegetables came onto the stage, and then animals evolved, and finally humans evolved from that. And our human nature, ultimately to move to our true selves, is to become souls, which when we leave this world, we leave those human aspects behind. And it's only our souls, that true self, that immortal identity, that goes on to live in other worlds of God and to develop. So all of these are stages of progression. And in one of Abdu'l-Baha's letters, he talks about how one of the reasons that the soul is in this world is so that it can transgress all the degrees of existence. And so our soul is our true self, and everything in creation is to serve the development of the soul. Everything, every atom, and it is our essential and immortal identity. The problem is we live in a culture that does not see that. Our culture says your identity is the job you do. It's your gender, it's your race, how much money you make, what your class is, where your nationality, all of these things that are not your essential and immortal identity. These things are what people are now focusing on. And this crisis of identity can easily be overcome if we recognize that we are spiritual beings with souls. Abdu'l-Baha says the reality of man is his thought, not his material body. The thought force and the animal force are partners. Although man is part of the animal creation, he possesses a power of thought superior to all other created beings, which if you, in the materialistic view of human beings, we are animals. But from the Baha'i view and the spiritual view, this power of thought distinguishes us from other animals. And of course, the soul even distinguishes us further. So first in creation, there was matter that formed into minerals that over time created the right conditions for the evolution of plants that were followed by animals, which set the stage for humans. So the stages and the spirits of development, as Abdu'l-Baha talks about, the mineral has the spirit of cohesion. It can cohere, it can hold together. The vegetable adds to that the spirit of growth. The animal adds to that the sensibility and movement. And the human adds to that. It encompasses all of those, but adds to it reason. So we are looking at these things. We can also look at over time how they've developed. If you look at the left-hand side, time, I think Farouz, we're hearing you. So if you want us to, or somebody is talking.
That was me. I apologize.
It's okay. Yeah, you have a lovely voice and I don't mind hearing it, but I just thought you didn't know and I wanted you to know. So I think that's my little help to you when you help me, because people weren't hearing me. So if you look on the left, over time, first there was matter, then minerals, then vegetables, then animal, then human. And also in terms of relative abundance of the realm, most of the universe is matter. Then there is minerals, then much less there are vegetables or plants, and even less there are animals, and even less there are humans. We are the latest and highest realm of material creation. And Abdu'l-Baha talks about the arc of ascent and descent. And we in the material creation are at the highest of ascent and at the lowest of spiritual growth. So these physical developments that made the human being actually took billions of years to accomplish in evolution. But we passed through them in 9 months within the womb. And so this is one of the miracles. We go from a one-cell creature to a full human being with all the potential capacities needed to manifest our reason and our spiritual development in those 9 months. We have mineral, vegetable, and animal aspects in our bodies, and we develop and transcend them with our rational mind and soul as we mature. This is a gradual process. It takes time and it goes through stages. Those stages are being studied a lot in psychology, and you can learn a lot from that. basically, and I talk about that in other places, but we basically, as we develop mentally, we basically first become egocentric, then we become ethnocentric, and Baha'u'llah has, which is the stage humanity is at now. They're very ethnocentric, identifying with their group. Their group is the best, better than all the rest. Baha'u'llah has come to move humanity to a world-centric thinking, that we are all one family, that the world is one country, and humankind are the citizens, which is a whole transition of thinking. It's transcending every conception we've had in the past. So it's a revolutionary change that he has come to bring about. So to show you that into another diagram, that human nature basically has mineral, vegetable, and animal aspects in it. The animal is in the body. It's the physical aspects. If you look at our physical body, it is an animal body. But what makes us human is our mind. And that is our mental capacities. And what makes us divine is our souls. It gives us the spiritual capacity. And each level that goes up encompasses, it doesn't leave behind the other levels, but it has to transcend them and uses those other levels to serve itself. So we might think of the body, mind, and soul, each evolving through a mineral, vegetable, animal, and human stage of development in becoming our true selves. Any questions so far? Or should we carry on?
Would you like to read the chat? There's a question about a higher level of being higher than human being. Would you like to address that later, or would you like to address that now?
Let's address it later. I do have a slide about that, because what we're doing in this talk is focusing on we're not going to focus on mineral and vegetable because we've transcended that. We're focusing on body, mind, and soul, which is really the process we deal in this world. But there are stages of spiritual development that go way beyond this. And I do talk about them in other places, such as, and it's also talked about in places like the Seven Valleys and such. So yes, there are, but most of us are actually living in the mind level, even as Baha'is, I feel, and I'm including myself. Most of my reality is centered in my mind and not in my soul. And so I work through the prayers and the readings and meditation to try and center myself, not in my mind, but in my soul, that my thinking, feeling, and actions are directed by my soul, not by my mind. When I was a baby, they were directed by my body. If I was hungry, I screamed, I cried, I wanted food. If I was uncomfortable, my body was what was where I was centered. I didn't have a mind to think about, well, I'll get fed, or I shouldn't do this or that. My mind was not yet developed. My thinking, feeling, and acting all were coming from my body. As I grew, my mind developed. And that's where society is right now. Society tends to be, actually, our society tends to focus on body and mind. We spend so much effort on having some kind of a beautiful body, attractive, all of these kinds of things. And a bit on the mind. We do very little to try and beautify our souls. So The embryo gradually grows and develops until it is born, and thereafter it continues to grow and develop until it reaches the stage of maturity. Although in infancy, the signs of mind and spirit are already present, they do not appear in a state of perfection and remain incomplete. But when man attains maturity, the mind and spirit manifest themselves in the utmost perfection. And spirit here, I think, would be synonymous with soul. So as we are maturing, and I'm trying to get to that stage at age 71, it does help because your body starts losing its capacities and my mind is losing its capacities. And so it's like, where can I go? I go into my soul. I have to develop that because the rest is not going anywhere. So the powers of the soul cause individual and collective human progress. Abdu'l-Baha says they can discover the realities of things, the peculiarities of beings, and penetrate the mysteries of existence. All sciences, knowledge, arts, wonders, institutions, discoveries, and enterprises come from the exercise intelligence of the rational soul. So whatever powers we're manifesting through our mind and even through our body with vision and hearing really are manifestations of the soul. The mind force, whether we call it pre-existent or contingent, doth direct and coordinate the members of the human body, seeing to it that each part or member duly performeth its own special function. If, however, there be some interruption in this power of the mind, all the members will fail to carry out their essential functions. Deficiencies will appear in the body and the functioning of its members, and the power will prove ineffective. But the mind is the power of the human spirit. Spirit is the lamp, mind is the light which shines from the lamp. Spirit is the tree and mind is the fruit. Mind is the perfection of the spirit and its essential quality, as the sun rays are the essential necessity of the sun. Abdu'l-Baha wrote in a tablet to Dr. August Farrell, consider how the human intellect develops and weakens and may at times come to naught, whereas the soul changeth not. For the mind to manifest itself, the human body must be whole, and a sound mind cannot be but in a sound body, whereas the soul dependeth not upon the body. It is through the power of the soul that the mind comprehendeth, imagineth, and exerteth its influence, whilst the soul is a power that is free. And Baha'u'llah also makes this quite clear in his writings. The powers of the sympathetic nerve, and I understand that when this was written, this now would be like the autonomic nervous system, are neither entirely physical nor spiritual, but are between the two systems. The nerve is connected with both. Its phenomena shall be perfect when its spiritual and physical relations are normal. When the material world and divine world are correlated, when the hearts become heavenly and the aspirations grow pure and divine, perfect connection shall take place. Then shall this power produce a perfect manifestation. Physical and spiritual diseases will then receive absolute healing. So what I want to do often when I'm giving talks to academic audiences. I was a professor from my career, and trying to talk about spiritual matters in academic institutions is a delicate task. And so what I like to do, especially when you're dealing with things like soul and spiritual, I like to go with a definition from dictionary, because what happens is people immediately create their own prejudices and such. And so there are a number of different dictionary definitions. This is one I have to choose here. And I want us to just kind of take a look at it in terms of kind of looking at it in relation to the Baha'i writings, but also to help us see it in terms of our knowing, loving, and willing capacities, because they define the soul as the animating and vital principle in humankind, credited with the faculties of thought, action, and emotion, and conceived as forming an immaterial entity, distinguished from but temporarily coexistent with the body. So dealing with this dictionary definition, it takes it out of where people think it's religious and all of this, and it's maybe based on some dogmatism or such. And so what I want to do is kind of break down this definition and look at it a little bit, because to me, with this definition, it kind of demystifies it and allows us to have a more rational and balanced conversation about the soul, which is very essential if we're going to be talking about our true identity and becoming our true selves. So first of all, it says it's the animating and vital principle in humankind. Baha'u'llah says the soul of man is the sun by which the body is illumined, and from which it draweth its sustenance, and should so be regarded. So I think, again, this definition accords with our Baha'u'llah's definition, our description. It is credited with the faculties of thought, action, and emotion. So thought relates to the body, it relates to knowing, to thinking, understanding, and truth. Whereas action is related to the body in terms of willing, doing, justice, and good. And the emotion is, we relate to the heart, which is our loving capacity. It is our feeling capacity. It leads to unity. And when you talk about the Greek ideals, the philosophical ideals, it is leads to beauty, attraction to beauty. So these faculties are faculties that are also studied in psychology. Thought is the cognitive domain, action is the psychomotor cognitive domain, and emotion is the affective domain. So these are not things that any scientist or any reasonable person should have a problem with. So thought, action, emotion are also, we can look at as aspects of the mind, heart, and body. The thought is our knowing, which relates to the mind, emotion as loving, which relates to the heart, and action is our willing capacity, which relates to the body. It is an immaterial entity, as the dictionary definition says. And Abdu'l-Baha says the soul, like the intellect, is an abstraction. Intelligence does not partake of the quality of space, though it is related to man's brain. The intellect resides there, but not materially. Search in the brain and you will not find the intellect. In the same way, though the soul is resident of the body, it is not to be found in the body. So it is an immaterial entity. It is distinguished from, but temporarily coexistent with the body. The soul is distinct from the body, but associated in this world. The body is like a horse and the soul is like a rider. At one level, we identify and care for the body as it is the vehicle for the soul, our true eternal identity, which exists and develops after the body dies. Abdu'l-Baha says the rational soul, the human spirit, did not descend into this body or subsist through it to begin with, that it should require some substance to depend upon after the constituent parts of the body have decomposed. On the contrary, the rational soul is the substance upon which the body depends. The rational soul is endowed from the beginning with individuality. It does not acquire it through the intermediary of the body. At most, what can be said is that the individuality and identity of the rational soul may be strengthened in this world, and that the soul may either progress and attain to the degrees of perfection or remain in the lowest abyss of ignorance and be veiled from and deprived of beholding the signs of God. The soul is beyond our comprehension. Metaphors help us to understand what it is and how it works. The development of the embryo is analogous to the development of the soul. Just as the body develops its physical capacities while in the womb of the mother, I can't read it, but it's probably the something spiritual capacities while in the womb of this world. The body is like the placenta to the soul, so that the soul can develop the spiritual qualities and characteristics needed in the next realm. The soul comes into being at conception. A one-celled zygote contains all the physical potential of the individual, just as the soul contains all of our spiritual possibilities, waiting to gradually unfold and develop. The soul has a unique spiritual identity, just as the body is a unique physical identity. There's the scholastics, as interpreted by the scholastics, the vegetative soul was common to plants. And this goes back to kind of what Abdu'l-Baha talks about, that the plants have that spirit to be able to grow. And the sensitive soul was common to animals and humans, and the rational soul was found only in humans. Vegetable love is thus a love that grows, takes nourishment, and reproduces, although slowly. The soul powers of our knowing, loving, and willing capacities and transcends the material mental realms. Here we receive the heavenly illumination, spiritual, understand spiritual reality, comprehend the mysteries of eternal life, and come to know, love, and obey God. So I'm going to stop there. I have a bunch of correlates here, but I think this is going to be too overwhelming. So let's stop there. I'm going to stop share and let's have a conversation. Okay. Thank you for listening. And I hope that wasn't too much of too much. I'm sorry if it was.